Tonight, Fox 8 investigates a death labeled a drug overdose and the mysterious actions surrounding it. Here's part one of our investigative series, Strangled. Time never stops.
You can't change these watches.
The ticking brings hope to a heartbroken father. Hope for justice, because the timeline to the story law enforcement told just doesn't add up.
The story has to be told. The truth has to come out.
On August 5th, 2005, time stopped for Joey Georgousis.
Joey made some bad choices.
Weeks before Hurricane Katrina, police told Joe Georgousis his 23-year-old son died of a drug overdose inside a New Orleans home.
He was doing recreational drugs. He wasn't putting a needle in his arm, wasn't doing heroin, none of that.
But months later...
So we had several people attempt to tell us how he was murdered. When you're a father and someone tells you your son's being murdered by multiple people, you have to go look.
Georgousis sued the Orleans Parish coroner to reclassify his son's death, which had been called a drug overdose. From that suit, we've reviewed nearly 30 hours of video depositions with questions asked by Georgousis' attorney. We also inspected thousands of pages of documents related to the case and spoke to more than 20 people on and off the record. The information we reviewed reveals Joey's death might not have been an accidental overdose. 1:13 in the afternoon, a frantic call to 911. The fear, the pain on that call, possibly an act, a fabrication by Jennifer Miller, the girlfriend of Joey. The reason why? Evidence suggests Joey died hours earlier that morning. While Joey died in New Orleans, this story has roots in neighboring St. Bernard Parish. That's where Joey Georgousis was raised. His father, a well-known developer, and at the time, a close friend of the sheriff, Jack Stevens. Video depositions with key St. Bernard Sheriff's employees reveal they were made aware of Joey's death that morning, hours before the 911 call.
Do you recall receiving a phone call back in August of 2005 regarding Joey Georgousis?
Yes.
Who called you?
Jack Stevens.
Do you recall what time of day Jack Stevens called you?
It was sometime in the morning hours.
Before noon?
Yes.
You think it was before 11 a.m.?
I want to say somewhere in between probably 7 and 9 o'clock.
In fact, a video deposition with another high-ranking sheriff detective reveals deputies from St. Bernard Parish went to Joey's New Orleans house hours before the 911 call.
I understand from your prior testimony that your best recollection is you received a call from Sheriff Stevens approximately 10:30 or 11 a.m. that morning?
Yes.
What time, and in that conversation, he asked you to go to Joey Georgousis' residence and check out the situation, is that
yes.
correct?
He gave me the address and told me where it was, and go out there and see what had happened.
A high-ranking detective from St. Bernard left his jurisdiction and crossed parish lines without ever calling New Orleans police. He went to Joey's Lakeview house after learning of his death hours before the 911 call. If you arrive on a scene and you're a law enforcer and the jurisdiction over that area is not on the scene yet, isn't it your duty to call and get the proper law enforcement there?
Of course. You don't cross jurisdictional bounds without letting the proper agency know.
Mike McMahon spent 32 years at the U.S. Attorney's Office. One of his last cases, investigating the death of Joey Georgousis. Sources tell us he left in the middle of grand jury proceedings. By his estimation, about 6 months from possibly returning an indictment.
Do you believe this was a drug overdose?
In my heart, no. I think it was a homicide. I think he was killed. He was murdered, I believe.
The facts seem to point out that he was dead around 7:30 in the morning.
Right.
And the 911 call wasn't made until 1 or so.
1:13 p.m.
1:13.
Right.
And many people in St. Bernard Parish knew he was dead hours prior to the 911 call.
Some people, yeah. I don't know about many, but some.
That's a fact.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, it is, yeah.
So the 911 call was an act.
It was possibly part of staging the scene to look like an overdose.
That's an act, right?
Right.
We'll delve into McMahon's theory on why Joey Georgousis might have been murdered. But first, more questions about the investigation. About 12 hours after receiving his body, the Orleans Parish coroner classified the death a drug overdose. A toxicology report found Joey did have drugs in his blood, including cocaine and oxycodone. Pathologist Samantha Huber performed the autopsy. In a deposition, Huber said as part of the autopsy, she fractured cartilage in Joey's neck area, something she claimed to routinely do.
I'm talking about you fractured as a matter of routine.
I fractured, at the time of autopsy, the larynx, the thyroid cartilage.
One pathologist says that routine fracture isn't standard practice and says it could have helped cover up what truly caused Joey's death. The Georgousis family hired well-known pathologist Cyril Wecht to review the Orleans coroner's work. Since 1957, Wecht has performed 41,000 autopsies.
No, you don't fracture the thyroid cartilage in a hyoid bone routinely. No, of course not. She says, her words, that she routinely does it. I've never heard of anything like that in my life.
So what does that lead you to believe?
I believe that there is evidence that strongly suggests that Joey Georgousis may have been strangled.
Because it was fractured.
Yeah, those fractures occur in a strangulation, whether it's ligature or manual. That kind of force applied in that area of the neck, that is what produces those multiple fractures.
So she said she did it, but you don't believe that she did it?
No, I don't believe that at all, no.
When the U.S. Attorney's Office went to interview Huber,
The forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy on Joey Jr., neither she nor her supervisor would speak to me. They took the Fifth.
They took the Fifth?
The Fifth Amendment. Well, number one, I've never, and I've prosecuted a good number of homicides, I've never had the pathologist take the Fifth. You take the Fifth if you have exposure, if you feel that you've done something illegal. That's why people take the Fifth, to protect themselves. So the Fifth Amendment states that you shall not be a witness against you. Why else take the Fifth? I mean, a coroner has no reason, or rather a pathologist has no reason to claim the privilege.
in a deposition, Joey's former girlfriend, Jennifer Miller, also took the Fifth.
Is it true that Joey Georgousis was murdered?
We'll take the Fifth on that.
And that takes us back to the 911 call. Jennifer Miller told the operator she was in the same room as Joey. When dispatched, the responding NOPD officers happened to be patrolling around the block from Joey's house. And minutes after the 911 call, Officer Jennifer Dupree arrived. We've recreated the scene to help show what Dupree claims she saw. When she walked into the living room, she says a friend of Joey's, Jerome Carasquillo, was sitting on the sofa.
I remember looking when you walked in, there was the kitchen right there. Stacks of dog food next to an island, and the white female was behind, just pointing to us where to go.
That was Jennifer Miller behind the kitchen island. She pointed Dupree to another room where she saw Joey's body. 3 people in 3 separate rooms, even though Jennifer Miller told the 911 operator moments earlier they were together. On the 911 call, EMS gave Miller instructions to perform CPR. But when Officer Dupree arrived after this exchange, no one was performing CPR.
Did it appear to you at that moment, Sergeant Dupree, that any person in the household had been attempting CPR in the last few minutes prior to your arrival?
No, because there was foam in his mouth. No.
Okay.
If CPR would have been performed, Joey likely would have had no foam in his mouth. EMS also told Miller to flip Joey on his back.
But you're absolutely sure when you walked in, the subject was face down on the bed, had not been rolled over on his back while you were there?
Right.
The former U.S. attorney thinks Joey Georgoussis died around 7:30 in the morning. Depositions revealed Jennifer Miller and Jerome Carasquillo were both at the house during that time. In 2012, Carasquillo pleaded guilty to obstruction of the crime scene at Joey's house for flushing drugs down the toilet.
Solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
So help me God.
Depositions suggest Georgoussis' attorney thinks 2 other friends might have been at the house then too, Dennis Brown and Vernon Cook. Both Brown and Cook have served time for dealing drugs. Both deny being at the house at the time of Joey's death. In the deposition, here's how Jennifer Miller answered questions about Brown and Cook.
Do you know Vernon Cook?
He was a friend of Joey's.
Is it true that Vernon Cook was present in the house at the time Joey died? Do you know Dennis Brown?
Friend of Joey's.
Okay. Is it true that Mr. Brown was in the residence at the time?
We'll take the 5th.
Mike McMahon doesn't know what his investigation would have concluded.
It would have been a very tough case, but so what?
As we pressed him for more details on the findings, he became cagey. But it does seem the federal investigation centers around prominent figures in St. Bernard Parish and potential drug activity.
My theory was that he was killed, it was covered up in order to protect or insulate these prominent figures from drug activity, and the cover-up has continued to this day.
Had drug dealers infiltrated the St. Bernard Parish Sheriff's Office?
I can't answer that. I'm not going to answer that.
McMahon wouldn't name the prominent political figures.
People have blood on their hands. The blood cries from the grave.
Joe Georgoussis says he's on a mission to find out what happened to his son.
We'll stay the course as long as I'm breathing.
The time keeps ticking. A death nearly 16 years ago keeps a father painfully wondering if his son and the investigation into his death were strangled.
The anger is an understatement. The hurt and the pain is beyond the anger. The hurt and the pain not heavy bill. We were robbed of his life. We were robbed.
The coroner never performed a quantitative analysis to see the level of drugs Georgoussis had in his system, only a report to show the types of drugs in his body. In 2015, former Orleans Parish Coroner Jeffrey Rouse reclassified Joey's death to undetermined. The current coroner's office told us the coroner's office is always willing to reevaluate cases as new evidence is presented. The coroner's office disputes McMahon's claim that they were unwilling to cooperate, writing in part Doctors Huber and Hunt agreed to cooperate and offered multiple dates for a meeting, but McMahon wouldn't allow their civil attorneys to attend. The office did not say if Huber took the fifth. We reached out to everyone mentioned in the story. Vernon Cook declined an interview. Jennifer Miller hung up on us last week when we were finally able to reach her. We also reached out to former Sheriff Jack Stevens, who released a lengthy statement through his attorney last night. He said he contacted Joe Georgoussis after a mutual friend told him something happened to Joey. Stevens said Georgoussis asked for more information as he traveled back home from out of state. Stevens said he sent 2 of his deputies to the home and the hospital. He said that was the total extent of my involvement with this matter, other than to assign some of my best deputies to investigate the source of the drugs which caused the death. You can read Stevens' statement in its entirety, along with extended interviews on fox8live.com/strangled.